Hello everyone, Ravi here. Now we are going to listen to podcast news which includes national, international and business news. While walking in the morning or evening, while cooking, cycling or during free time you can listen. It will enhance your learning and understanding of various accents and pronunciations. Listening improves the quality of communication and comprehension. Before going ahead, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual school. A new way of learning and teaching, with the vision of let's grow together. Our mission is to learn how to learn and teach how to teach. So stay tuned. And here we go. 27th May 2021. National news. Cyclone Yaas makes landfall in Balasore, triggers heavy damage, 4 killed in Odisha, 1 in Bengal, many areas inundated. Rushing in, sea water entering through the boundaries of a house as Cyclone Yaas made landfall in Chandipur area of Balasore, Odisha, on Wednesday. Pti. Satyasundar Barik Shiv Sahaj Singh, Bhubaneswar, Kolkata. The very severe cyclonic storm, Yaas, that made landfall south of Balasore in Odisha on Wednesday, tore into the border regions of West Bengal and Odisha and weakened into a cyclonic storm, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake on the eastern coast. 5 persons were killed, 4 in Odisha and 1 in West Bengal. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee said 1 crore people had been affected, and about 15 lakh people had been evacuated. National Disaster Response Force and army personnel joined the rescue and relief operations. In Odisha, 128 villages in Balasore and Bhadrak districts were inundated following seawater ingress. The cyclone caused extensive damage to power transmission lines in coastal areas. Hundreds of thatched houses were ravaged. Yaas battered the tree cover while passing through Balasore and Mayurbhanj districts. Thousands of big trees were uprooted. According to the India Meteorological Department, the storm crossed the North Odisha coast about 20 kilometers south of Balasore between 10:30 am and 11:30 am with estimated wind speeds of 130 to 140 kmph. The cyclone hit the coast with far less intensity than what was predicted. By afternoon, the cyclonic storm had moved away from Balasore and had entered Mayurbhanj district, triggering heavy rain. The system is expected to enter Jharkhand as a cyclone. 6.5 lakh evacuated. In Odisha, the coastal districts of Balasore, Bhadrak, Kendrapara and Jagsingpur and northern Mayurbhanj district were affected. The state had evacuated about 6.5 lakh people, including 1.52 lakh in Balasore, 1.2 lakh in Bhadrak and 1 lakh in Mayurbhanj district. Special Relief Commissioner Pradeep Kumar Jaina said the damage was being assessed. Collectors of Balasore and Keonjhar had confirmed 2 deaths, he said. As predicted by the IMD, tidal surge was observed above 4 m in Balasore and Bhadrak. Inundation was reported in the Dhamra area of Bhadrak district and Behnagar, Raimuna, Baliapal and Balasore town of Balasore district. People had cut roads at several places to discharge water. The embankments would be repaired soon, said Mr. Jaina. WhatsApp approaches Delhi HC to challenge new IT rules. Breaking end-to-end encryption infringes on citizens' rights. Sobham Rocky Singh, New Delhi. Instant messaging app WhatsApp has approached the Delhi High Court challenging the central government's new Information Technology Rules, 2021, which include a requirement for social media platforms to compulsorily enable the identification of the first originator of the information in India upon government or court order. The Facebook-owned company argued that this provision forces it to break end-to-end encryption on its messaging service, as well as the privacy principles underlying it, and infringes upon the fundamental rights to privacy and free speech of the hundreds of millions of citizens using WhatsApp to communicate privately and securely. The Information Technology, Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code, Rules, 2021, was notified on February 25 this year amidst concerns raised by various experts over its impact on privacy, freedom of expression and security of users online. While this is the first major tech company to challenge the new IT rules, the Delhi HC is already seized of petitions by several news portals, such as The Wire, The News Minute, Quint Digital Media Limited and the Foundation for Independent Journalism, over its attempt to regulate digital news media. The petitions claimed that the new rules seek to regulate online news portals by imposing a vaguely worded code of ethics. Major lapse in giving vaccines in UP village, 20 persons given rowing second dose. Omar Rashid Jacob Koshi, Lucknow, New Delhi. In a major lapse, 20 villagers in Siddharthnagar district of eastern Uttar Pradesh were administered the Covishield vaccine in their first dose but given Covaxin in the second shot. The incident took place during the vaccination drive at a primary health center in Barahni block. Ramsharad Varun, a resident of Oidhi Kala village, said he received Covishield on April 1st. However, he was given a shot of Covaxin on May 14th during his second dose. They did not check anything. The Asha worker was standing elsewhere, he told reporters. Mr. Varun said he is now afraid of possible side effects. While 18 persons were from his village, 2 others were from another. Radheshyam Shukla, 61, another villager administered the 2 vaccines, said though he did not face any side effects, he was anxious for many days. It is an act of negligence. It should not have happened. But now many days have passed, since May 14th, nothing adverse has happened. We appear to be healthy, he told The Hindu when asked if he would want the administration to monitor him. A probe is being carried out. Chief Medical Officer, Siddharthnagar, Sandeep Chaudhary said a clarification was being sought from officials on the ground and action would be taken accordingly. It is a lapse because there is no guideline by the Government of India that a cocktail of vaccines be administered, he said. Panel to probe removal of shrouds from graves. Bodies were buried on banks of Ganga. Remains of burned shrouds seen on the banks of the Ganga. Prabhat Kumar Verma. Special Correspondent, Lucknow. The Prayagraj District Administration has ordered a probe into the removal of shrouds from the bodies buried in the sand on the banks of the Ganga, days after it was reported that the bodies could be of suspected COVID-19 victims. A 2-member committee of ADM, Administration, and ASP, Gangapur, Prayagraj would probe the matter. In a joint statement, DM Bhanu Chandra Goswami and Prayagraj Dig Sarvashresht Tripathi said the matter was extremely serious and sensitive. The panel has been asked to probe all angles, including which elements were involved in the act of removing the shrouds from the graves and what was their intention. The panel has also been asked to take appropriate legal action against those found guilty. Visuals widely shared on social media had shown cleaners, allegedly deployed by the administration, removing the shrouds. Country reports 2,02,570 new COVID-19 cases, 3,577 deaths. T.N. reports 33,764 infections, followed by Kerala with 28,798. Special Correspondent, Chennai. India recorded 2,02,570 new COVID-19 cases and 3,577 deaths till 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday. The country has so far reported a total of 2,73,59,230 cases and 3,14,999 deaths. Tamil Nadu reported 33,764 new infections, followed by Kerala, 28,798, and Karnataka, 26,811. Maharashtra recorded 992 casualties on the day, followed by Karnataka, 530, and Tamil Nadu, 475. Maharashtra's fatalities include backlog deaths which were missed in the previous reports. The figures do not include Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Punjab, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Ladakh. The data is sourced from the state's health bulletins. As many as 22,17,320 samples were tested in the country on Tuesday, the results for which were made available on Wednesday. Farmers mark 6 months of stir with black day. Neither police nor extreme weather conditions could break us, will intensify agitation if laws are not repealed, protesters. Resolute in their fight, Protesters burn an effigy of PM Narendra Modi during the protest at the single border. Farmers raised slogans while observing Black Day at Ghazipur border on Wednesday. Sushil Kumar Verma, Avi Murthy Sushil Kumar Verma. Shinjini Ghosh Saurabh Trivedi New Delhi. A ragging pandemic, extreme weather conditions and intimidation from authorities on several occasions had not been able to break the movement. Protesting farmers at the single border said as they marked 6 months of the agitation on Wednesday. Thousands of farmers from the capital's neighboring states had reached the city's borders in November last year, demanding a complete repeal of the 3 controversial farm laws brought in by the centre. Amid sloganeering, hosting black flags and burning effigies, the protesting farmers maintained that their demands of a repeal of the 3 laws and legal guarantee of minimum support price remained the same as on the first day of them reaching the borders of the national capital. Brief ruckus. At Ghazipur on the Delhi-Uttar Pradesh border, hundreds of farmers, led by Bharatiya Kisan Union, BKU, leader Rakesh Tikait, converged into groups as they burnt an effigy of the centre in protest. A ruckus briefly ensued between protesters and the local police, donning anti-riot gears, who had tried to stop them from burning the effigy at the UP gate below the Delhi-Meerut expressway. Amradeep Singh, a farmer from Punjab's Patiala district, who has been camping at the single border since the initial days of the agitation said, "Sitting somewhere far away from one's family is difficult for anyone." To add to it, the government also tried to pressurize us in all sorts of ways. At times they create panic about COVID-19 and at other times, they disrupted water and electricity supplies. They even tried to torture youth by bringing up some toolkit issue. But we have the Almighty's blessings and we have managed to resist all kinds of threats. Trolleys have been modified and harvest season managed without a glitch. People are back to the border in large numbers. This agitation will continue and we will follow whatever our leaders say, said Mr. Singh. Referring to an instance of police action which took place after people claiming to be locals staged a protest at the single border in January, Gurmeet Singh, a farmer from Punjab's Moga district said, "Neither the police nor the extreme weather conditions could break us. We are as determined as ever. The protest is on and will continue till our demands are met. We will not accept anything lesser than a complete repeal of the laws. This movement is a fight for our identity. Agriculture is our livelihood and if the laws are implemented then we will anyway have to die. We might as well die while fighting for our rights. We will continue the struggle and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have to take back the laws," said Mr. Singh. Sukhwinder Singh, a farmer from the Rupnagar district said that the movement will be intensified if the laws are not repealed and groups of youth will be sent to different parts of the country including election-bound states, to raise awareness. If the government withdraws the laws then it will be good. If they do not, then groups of youth will be sent to states like Uttar Pradesh to raise more awareness. Ground-level preparations are already underway. The elections which are to take place next year will be an important test for this government, said Mr. Singh. Further, Mr. Singh added, "Through the agitation we have realized the concept of humanity and how to fight for others. We have seen how all states have participated and supported us. Everyone has now realized that the current government has only spread hate. The youth is also more aware and will not believe any manifesto which is put before them. They have realized the importance of questioning everything. Today, Wednesday, was a special day for us as we observed a Black Day. The Delhi police have urged people not to hold gatherings due to the COVID-19 situation and the ongoing lockdown and said it is keeping a tight vigil to deal with any situation at the protest sites. Assam government creates separate department for welfare of BTR areas. It is seen as a reward for its role in voting BJP back to power. Special Correspondent Guwahati. The Assam government on Wednesday created the Welfare of Bodoland Department for dealing with issues related to 4 districts under the Bodoland Territorial Region, BTR. The affairs of Bodoland were under the Welfare of Plain Tribes and Backward Classes Department earlier. The announcement was made after a cabinet meeting chaired by Chief Minister Himant Biswa Sarma. The cabinet also decided to set up a Bodoland Administrative Staff College in Kokratar, the headquarters of BTR, and start it immediately from a rented building if no suitable government facility is available. The Bodos are the largest plains-dwelling ethnic community in the northeast, and the focus of the cabinet on Bodoland is believed to have been a reward for playing a role in voting the BJP back to power in Assam. Dr. Sharma said a decision was also taken to eliminate the system of seeking the finance department's approval for releasing monthly stipends to beneficiaries of schemes for the old age pension, widows and the differently abled. The senior-most secretary of the department concerned has been empowered to transfer cash to the accounts of the beneficiaries within the 10th of every month, he stated. Lakshadweep, experts urge Kerala governor to intervene, implement changes only after consultations. Calm shattered, activists feel the new policies are a threat to the culture and traditions of Lakshadweep. Special correspondent Thiruvananthapuram. Social and environmental scientists, social activists, ecologists and geographers have appealed to Kerala Governor Arif Mohammad Khan to intervene to stop the reforms that are underway in Lakshadweep and to review them urgently. Lakshadweep Administrator Praful Patel has been accused of unilaterally lifting restrictions on the use of alcohol in the islands, banning beef products, and demolishing fishermen's sheds built in coastal areas, saying they violated the Coast Guard Act. The programs being planned should have a long-term vision and follow a regional, need-based, consultative approach, they said in a letter to the governor on Wednesday. The signatories include D. Nandakumar, former professor of geography, S. Santi, environmental researcher and scientist, Radha Gopalan, environmental scientist, Gopakumar Pillai, ocean hydrographer, Usha P. social activist, Ashok S., human resource consultant, Jolly Verghese, geographer, Renu Henry, environmental activist, and Anita S., ecologist, subject expert on ecology of Lakshadweep. Panel to investigate charges of illegal construction in Mekedatu. NGT appoints joint committee, directs it to submit a report on or before July 5. Matter of concern, the NGT directed the panel to assess the damage caused to the environment. Sudhakra Jain. Special Correspondent CHENNAI. The National Green Tribunal, NGT, Southern Zone, has appointed a joint committee to look into allegations of unauthorized construction activity taking place in Mekedatu, where the Karnataka government had proposed to construct a dam across the Koveri River. Acting suo motu based on a media report, the NGT has directed the panel to submit a report on or before July 5. If the project is to be implemented without conducting any environmental impact assessment study and without obtaining necessary clearance, if any required, then it will be an unauthorized act affecting the environment, the NGT said, adding that it would get the jurisdiction of intervening on the issue. Considering the allegations made in the news report, it said, "We are satisfied that there arises a substantial question of environment, which requires the interference of this tribunal." The NGT also directed the joint committee to assess the damage caused to the environment in case of any construction made and determine the compensation payable by the respective authorities who are responsible. The Principal Chief Conservator of Forest, Department of Forests, State of Karnataka, would be the nodal agency for coordination and for providing necessary logistics for this purpose, it added. The NGT has issued a notice communicating its decision to the Union Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, Department of Water Resources, Central Water Commission, Koveri Water Management Authority, Chief Secretaries of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, among others. Subodh Kumar Jaswal takes charge as CBI chief. He brings in a unique mix of experience. Subodh Kumar Jaswal PTI. Devesh K. Pandey, New Delhi. Subodh Kumar Jaswal, a 1985 batch Indian Police Service, IPS, officer, took charge as the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, director on Wednesday. Mr. Jaswal brings along a unique mix of experience in the field of spycraft, investigation and administrative supervision. A balanced person, this is how many in the police services describe him. Fresh ideas. The Maharashtra cadre officer has served the Research and Analysis Wing, RAW, for 10 years. He was also on deputation with the Elite Special Protection Group, SPG, for 6 years. However, he has never served in the CBI before. In many ways, This will benefit the agency in terms of fresh ideas. The previous chief, Rishi Kumar Shukla, also did not have any prior stint with the CBI, said an official. In July 2018, Mr. Jaswal was appointed the Mumbai Police Commissioner. He became the Maharashtra Director General of Police, DGP, in March 2019. During his tenure as the DGP, the Elgar Parishad and Bhima Koregaon cases were probed. The two cases were transferred to the National Investigation Agency, NIA. Mr. Jaswal had some differences with the State Home Department's approach towards the transfer and posting of police officers. He had also warned police officers against lobbying for desirable postings. The IPS officer then sought a no objection from the state government to secure a central deputation, which was immediately approved. He took over as the Central Industrial Security Force, CISF, chief on 8 January 2021, following which he was empaneled as one of the candidates for selection as director, CBI. Earlier stints. During his earlier stints with the Maharashtra Police, Mr. Jaswal was a part of the probe into the infamous Khalji stamp paper scam case, which was later transferred to the CBI. He also worked with the state's anti-terrorism squad during the investigation into the 2006 Malegaon blasts case. Mr. Jaswal has been awarded the President Police Medal for Distinguished Services in 2009, Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Services in 2001 and the Internal Security Medal, Central Government. Jaishankar, UN Chief discuss ramping up supply of jabs. Climate change and resilience also featured in the dialogue. Key talks. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, left, with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in New York. PTI. Sriram Lakshman. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's US visit began in New York, where he met United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The discussions included the subject of ramping up the global supply of COVID-19 vaccines, including a World Trade Organization (WTO) initiative sponsored by India and South Africa to waive intellectual property protection for vaccines and other related products, according to a statement released by India's UN mission. They also discussed climate change, including the International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster-Resilient Infrastructure. They agreed that greater ambitions required more resources and greater commitment from the developed world, the statement said. Mr. Jaishankar highlighted India's priorities for its presidency of the Security Council, August 2021. This included a discussion of events on maritime security and on technology and peacekeeping. Afghanistan, and protecting the gains of the last 2 decades, was discussed at the meeting, as was countering radicalization and terrorism in the region, according to the official statement from the Indian side. The two leaders also discussed the situation in Myanmar, the statement noted. Peace efforts. He, Mr. Jaishankar, underlined our strong development partnership with Africa, small states and small island developing states. The Secretary General conveyed his appreciation for the consistent role played by Indian peacekeepers in support of international peace and security. Their response in aiding the people of Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo following the volcanic eruption was recognized. Mr. Jaishankar also conveyed India's support for Mr. Guterres' candidature for re-election for a second term as Secretary General. The Hindu reported last week that Mr. Jaishankar would discuss the procurement of vaccines with Pfizer, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson officials. Pfizer declined to comment on the specifics of the discussions as they were confidential and ongoing, but a spokesperson of the company told The Hindu that Pfizer was committed to continuing our engagement with the Government of India towards making our vaccine available for use in the country. Moderna and Johnson & Johnson declined to respond despite multiple attempts to reach out to their representatives. Thank you. International news. US peddling conspiracies, says China it is disrespectful to WHO probe to revive the theory that coronavirus emerged from Wuhan lab, Beijing. Under suspicion, security personnel keeping watch outside the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Reuters Thomas Peter. Agence France Presse Beijing. China on Wednesday accused the US of spreading conspiracy theories and disinformation, as the theory resurfaced that the coronavirus emerged from a Wuhan laboratory, while urging Washington to open its virology facilities to scrutiny. Led by the US, pressure is mounting for a new probe into the origins of COVID-19 after a World Health Organization (WHO) mission to China, beset by delays and dogged by political baggage, returned inconclusive findings. The Wuhan Institute of Virology has returned to the spotlight after a report in the Wall Street Journal, citing US intelligence, said 3 laboratory workers there were hospitalized in November 2019 with coronavirus-like symptoms, a month before the pandemic's first declared case. The newspaper also said researchers had collected samples 7 years earlier from a mine in southwestern China, where miners had contracted a mysterious illness from a new, bat-borne coronavirus. Repeating an earlier denial of the report, Zhao Lijian, spokesman for China's foreign ministry, accused the US of spreading conspiracy theories and disinformation such as a laboratory leak. The theory that the killer virus leaked from a Chinese laboratory was originally fueled by, among others, the administration of former US President Donald Trump. Mr. Zhao said it was disrespectful to the WHO probe to revive the theory, and risked an undermining of global solidarity to fight the virus. Since infecting its first victims in the central Chinese city of Wuhan in late 2019, the pathogen has struck almost every country in the world, killing more than 3.4 million people and eviscerating national economies. If the US really wants full transparency, then it should, like China did, invite WHO experts to visit the US and investigate, Zhao added. Open up Fort Detrick military base as early as possible, and all the biolabs the US has around the world, he said, referring to a US research facility in Maryland. The long-delayed report, by the team of international experts sent to Wuhan and their Chinese counterparts, drew no firm conclusions on the origins of the pandemic. Instead, the WHO-led team said the virus most likely jumped from bats to humans via an intermediate animal. Defiant Lukashenko defends plain diversion, blasts critics I acted lawfully to protect our people, says Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko. Agence France-Presse Minsk. A defiant President Alexander Lukashenko on Wednesday defended Belarus' diversion of a European flight and arrest of a dissident on board, lashing out at critics at home and abroad. In his first public statement since the Ryanair flight was diverted and opposition journalist Roman Protasiewicz arrested on Sunday, Mr. Lukashenko dismissed the international outcry the incident provoked. I acted lawfully to protect our people, Mr. Lukashenko said in an address to parliament, the Belta state-run news agency reported. The criticism was nothing more than another attempt by his opponents to undermine his rule, he said. Our ill-wishers at home and abroad have changed their methods of attacking the state, Mr. Lukashenko said. They have crossed many red lines and crossed boundaries of common sense and human morality. Mr. Lukashenko, often dubbed Europe's last dictator, is facing some of the strongest international pressure of his 26-year rule of ex-Soviet Belarus. The strongman and his allies are already under a series of Western sanctions over a brutal crackdown on mass protests that followed his disputed re-election to a sixth term last August. European leaders are now accusing authorities in Minsk of essentially hijacking the passenger flight, and they agreed this week to cut air links with Belarus and told airliners to avoid the country's airspace. The Belarusian opposition has called for further and stronger measures, and the UN Security Council was set to meet behind closed doors later on Wednesday. The Athens to Vilnius flight was diverted over a supposed bomb scare, with Mr. Lukashenko scrambling a MiG-29 fighter jet to accompany the aircraft. Belarus has released a transcript of communications between Minsk Air Traffic Control and the Ryanair flight, in which the crew was told, "You have a bomb on board," and urged to land in Minsk. Mr. Lukashenko denied that the fighter jet had forced the airliner to land, calling such claims an absolute lie. Quad targeting China, Consul General calls to decouple Indian and Chinese economies opportunistic, says Tang Gaokai. Anant Krishnan. China's Consul General in Mumbai said it was self-contradictory to ask China to keep supply chains open, amid a current surge in Indian imports of supplies, while at the same time, threatening decoupling between the Indian and Chinese economies. He also hit out at the India, United States, Japan, Australia grouping, known as the Quad, describing it as an attempt for containment. It is self-contradictory for some Indian media and think tanks to ask China keeping the supply chain open on the one hand, and threaten decoupling with China on the other. Such opportunistic and protective ideas will only add up to the problem, said Tang Gaokai. He was speaking at a seminar on Tuesday on poverty reduction organized by China's consulate in Mumbai, along with the South Indian Education Society in Mumbai and the Yunnan International Research Center, according to remarks published on the consulate's website. Working together, he said organizations and businesses in China were making every effort supporting India to fight the virus. As a matter of fact, China is providing the vast majority of oxygen concentrators and other medical supplies India needs, Mr. Tang said. China is the first country to get out of the pandemic and resume development, offering India and the region huge opportunities. We are glad to find the second wave of COVID-19 here is melting down. As two of the world's largest vaccine producers, China and India have every reason to join hand and work for the final victory against the pandemic in our region and the world. Since early April, Chinese firms had received orders for more than 60,000 oxygen concentrators from Indian firms, of which around half have been exported, in addition to more than 5,000 ventilators. India has asked China to keep supply chains open to ensure smooth movement of goods after Sichuan Airlines last month announced a 15-day suspension in cargo flights. The airline later said it would resume services. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said earlier this month companies had been encountering difficulties in logistics, but following his April 30th conversation with his counterpart Wang Yi, approvals had been expedited and the logistics chain was flowing. China's government has criticized India's recent moves to not include its telecom firms in 5G trials and to place more stringent curbs on FDI coming in from countries that share a border with India, seen widely as being aimed at Beijing. RCEP deal. On calls to accelerate decoupling from China, Mr. Tang said, Western, hawkish strategy, and wolf-pack tactics will eventually shoot themselves in the foot, as he drew a contrast between the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, trade deal, which India withdrew from, and the Quad, describing RCEP as bringing in a new wave of multilateralism and free trade. The integration and development of East Asia, South Asia and Southeast Asia are unstoppable, he said. RCEP has always opened its door to India, he said. On the other hand, the Group of Four, Quad, advocates so-called democratic alliance, and targets certain specific country in an attempt for containment. He said China's experiences in poverty reduction, particularly its rural revitalization strategy, offered lessons for India, with the government last year announcing the eradication of absolute poverty. Poverty eradication was premised on the idea that China does not simply transfuse blood to the poor, but to encourage them to work hard and make blood themselves. He also slammed the West for hindering China's development and said, under the pretext of the so-called democracy and human rights issues, they disrupt the agriculture industry of developing countries. For instance, the West has been fabricating the so-called cotton human rights issue in Xinjiang, China, he said, referring to allegations of forced labor and human rights abuses in the cotton industry. In fact, India's cotton spinning and agriculture also suffered likewise, he said. They are actually trying to create racial divisions politically and stifle the foundation of national rejuvenation economically, so that China and India will remain poor and weak forever. More scrutiny of Israel rights record sought. Associated Press, Geneva. Member states of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation are calling on the UN Human Rights Council to set up a permanent commission to report on human rights violations in Israel, Gaza and the West Bank. If passed, it would mark an unprecedented level of scrutiny authorized by the UNSTOP human rights body. The proposal, formally presented late on Tuesday, comes ahead of a special session of the Geneva-based council on Thursday to address the grave human rights situation in Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The meeting was sought by Pakistan as the OIC's coordinator. Blinken turns to Egypt to calm West Asia. Associated Press, Cairo. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken jetted to Egypt on Wednesday as he pressed ahead with a diplomatic mission aimed at shoring up a ceasefire that ended an 11-day war between Israel and the Gaza Strip's ruling Hamas militant group. Mr. Blinken landed in Cairo a day after holding talks with Israeli and Palestinian leaders. In Egypt, he met President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and other top officials. Meeting with American diplomatic staff afterwards, he described Egypt as a real and effective partner that helped end the Gaza war and is helping build something positive. Mr. Blinken has vowed to rally international support to rebuild Gaza while promising to make sure that none of the aid reaches Hamas. He is instead trying to bolster the internationally recognized Palestinian Authority. Don't allow US bases, Taliban tells neighbors. Agents France Press, Kabul. The Taliban warned Afghanistan's neighbors on Wednesday against allowing the US to operate military bases on their soil, the insurgents insisting they would thwart such a historic mistake. Washington is in the final stages of withdrawing its troops from Afghanistan, and a flurry of diplomatic calls between the US and Pakistan in recent days has fueled speculation the Pentagon is scouting for new bases to use against the Taliban. We urge neighboring countries not to allow anyone to do so, the Taliban said in a statement. If such a step is taken again, it will be a great and historic mistake and disgrace. It would not remain silent in the face of such heinous and provocative acts, the statement added. Pakistan on Tuesday dismissed local media reports that it had struck a new deal with Washington. Dhaka clears currency swap for Lanka. Gopaya's request to Modi for a $1.1 billion currency swap is pending since 2020. Meera Srinivasan. Bangladesh on Tuesday cleared a $200 million currency swap facility for Sri Lanka, becoming the first South Asian country to extend crucial financial assistance to the island nation this year. Dhaka-based The Daily Star newspaper reported on Wednesday that Bangladesh was extending a lifeline of sorts to the beleaguered Sri Lankan economy, offering to top up its depleting foreign reserves. The board of the Bangladesh Bank has decided in principle to lend $200-250 million from Bangladesh's reserves to Sri Lanka for 3 months, Mohammad Sirajul Islam, a spokesman for the Bangladesh Bank, the country's central bank, told AFP in Dhaka. With Sri Lanka's main foreign exchange earning sectors, tourism, export of garments and tea, badly hit due to the pandemic, the country has been struggling to maintain its reserves in the face of a daunting debt repayment schedule. Foreign reserves. In April 2021, Sri Lanka's foreign reserves stood at $4.5 billion, about the same amount that the country is due to settle this year in external loan repayments. So far this year, Colombo has obtained financial assistance from China through a $1.5 billion currency swap arrangement and a $500 million loan, in addition to the $500 million extended last year. Sri Lanka also inked a $500 million loan agreement with the Exim Bank of Korea a fortnight ago. India, which extended a $400 million currency swap facility from the Reserve Bank of India, it was settled in February 2021 after an extension, is yet to respond to Sri Lanka's year-old request for an additional $1.1 billion currency swap facility. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa made the request during a telephone conversation with PM Narendra Modi in May 2020. New Delhi is also yet to approve Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa's request for a debt moratorium, which he sought before the pandemic hit the region. Meanwhile, Dhaka clearing the request, discussed during PM Mahinda Rajapaksa's visit to the capital in March, brings some relief to Colombo, senior officials said, although the decision is yet to be formalized in a bilateral agreement. Despite the pandemic, Bangladesh's foreign reserves hit a record high in April, crossing the $45 billion mark. Thank you. Business News. Interview Vertical Bar Uday Kotak. July-Sept period will be key. CII chief says lot will hinge on state's approach to reopening. Suresh Seshadri. After recommending stringent curbs on economic activity to contain the suffering from the pandemic. CII President Defiant Lukashenko earlier this month urged companies to take voluntary measures to break the COVID transmission chain by minimizing all in-person work. Mr. Kotak, who completes his term at CII's helm on May 31st, said the coming months would require careful calibration to revive the economy. Excerpts. You have earlier stressed that saving lives was far more important. What do you see as the way forward? We are really caught in a cleft. On the one hand, if you look at all the analysts, most of them are saying that with a reasonable lockdown kind of situation, the total positive COVID cases should come down to about 50,000 per day by end of June. We are then in a situation where we have the ability to have selective opening up in different parts of the country. But the fact is our internal borders are open, and people can freely move around in any part of the country. And the levels of vaccination are still relatively lower as a percentage of the population. So we are in a catch-22 situation, in which I think each state will have to calibrate carefully in terms of what it needs to do. My view is both states and individuals will be more cautious this time around in opening up than we have been in the last year. At the same time, I do believe that our vaccination progress, we should catch up by somewhere around the end of September. Therefore the real hiatus for us to manage is this period of 3 months. July, August, September. And those are the calls we need to take carefully for 2 reasons. If we do the calibration well, we will have a much lower risk of 3.0, third wave. 2, we would have vaccinated a lot more people. And we will also have some clarity, how effective the vaccines are at the various levels. What can the CII do to get a uniform vaccine policy? Frankly, if there is a way by which government can create a joint task force representing both public and private sector, in terms of taking the vaccination strategy forward, I think CII will recommend that strongly. What can be done to support the economy? Expand the fisc, support the weaker segments of society or stressed sectors. And for the pressure it brings onto the government bond market and higher borrowing, expand the balance sheet of the RBI. The other aspect is the financial sector. The ECLGS scheme, they should expand it or think about expanding it. They can look at 5 rupees lakh crore and let the government give the guarantees to the banks, which can give additional funding to particularly the cyclical category of borrowers who then have a chance of survival. Then you come to the part where the banks feel that they, borrowers, may have a better chance if they gave a little breathing time, which means restructuring. My view is that there is nothing in the RBI guidelines which stops a bank from restructuring a loan, even if it is declared an NPA. The transaction between the borrower and the banker can be in terms of what's right for making it easier for the borrower to sustain itself for paying back the bank. At a time like this, we have to protect India's reputation in the financial sector and our credibility. We should not have a situation where banks merely extend and protect, but focus more on doing what is right, take the pain on their balance sheet. We must ensure that the shocks are either taken by the state or by the capital cushions in financial institutions. And I feel capital is the oxygen of the banking sector. And we must have enough oxygen. Second wave threatens startups, MSMEs, survey 59% of firms may shut shop or sell off. Special correspondent New Delhi. Hit hard by the second wave of the pandemic, about 59% of startups and MSMEs are likely to either scale down operations, sell off, or completely shut in the next 6 months, according to a survey by local circles. The survey saw participation from more than 6,000 startups and MSMEs located in 171 districts of India. When asked where they saw their business future in the next 6 months given the impact of the second wave of COVID-19, 37% said they would scale down their operation, while 14% said they might shut down, and 8% said they would sell off their business. Only 22% of startups and MSMEs see growth in their business during this period, the survey said. On a question related to the months of cash they had on hand, 33% of small businesses said they had only less than a month of cash remaining, whereas 8% were already out of funds. About 37% said they had funds for 1 to 3 months, 22% have more than 3 months of runway and 11% said they had it for more than 6 months. Exempt micro enterprises from GST, raise turnover threshold to 5 rupees crore. CIA. Special Correspondent Chennai. The Consortium of Indian Associations, CIA, has urged the centre to increase the turnover threshold limit for micro enterprises to facilitate their exemption from the Goods and Services Tax, GST. The second wave has wiped out more than 40% of MSMEs involved in various sectors, said CIA convener K. Raghunathan, adding that the need of the hour was to save micro enterprises from the hassle and help them to survive the present crisis by increasing the turnover threshold limit to 5 rupees crore for floor Y22. Secondly, COVID-related materials such as hand sanitizers, masks, medicines, oxygen cylinders, medical treatments and PPE kits must be exempted from all forms of GST, both for input and output, till March 2022, Mr. Raghunathan said. If the above two requests are not considered, it would amount to killing the goose that lays golden eggs in one stroke, the CIA convener added. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video as podcast. Do like, share and comment. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get new notifications. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. God bless you all. Jai Maa Badi.